Right now I'd like to have John Sykes come up here to introduce our very special guest.
It's a pleasure to be here tonight. A zillion 463 trillion years ago, even though neither one of us looks a day over 19, I don't know why you're laughing. Really. I did news for this guy over at 970 WFLA. My very first day working with him, I was scheduled to start working the following day. I turned on the television set first thing. Well, actually, it was before that I found out that someone had hit the Sunshine Skyway and that it had gone down. And I hit the phone real fast and called into the newsroom and asked, "You think it'd be a good idea if I started today instead of tomorrow?" Since there was a major international story breaking at the moment. And so that's, I had not met Jack at that particular point, but my first day on the job was that day, and for that first week I was out at the Skyway reporting from there. And for the next couple of years, I had the good pleasure of working with this good guy. Jack, as you know, is on 970 WFLA, along with Ted Webb in the morning from 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. And I'm his other listener, because at 5 o'clock in the morning my cell phone goes off, and it wakes me up to his voice along with Ted, and now Allison Turner has joined the group as well. Before I bring Jack up here in the next second, I want to acknowledge there are really a couple more really great people here. My friend Glenn Schultz is running for secretary of the party. He's the only one who's being contested right now. If there's anyone who deserves that office, he does. He works very hard at it, and just a first-class human being, great Christian guy. I work with him in broadcasting. He works for Christian radio here with Moody Christian Radio. He's on the air doing news and other things, and he also was a board op for me at another radio station a couple of years back when I was doing a live radio talk show. And it's just first-class people. So if there's anyone here on the committee, I'm asking you to vote for him to retain him in office this next time. With that, I'm going to shut up and stop that part of it. Jack, come on this way. Yes. Jack Harris. This guy, I agree with this guy all the time. The only time I've ever found that he's wrong about something is when he has an opinion that is different from my own.
Back to that day or that particular time. I got to say, first of all, you're not going to hear any better speech here now than you have already gotten. You've gotten the best earlier from Karina up here. That was fantastic. And that quote from Reagan was good, but what you said was so cogent. The fact that we can thank President Obama for this group and groups like it all across the fruit of plain. Yeah. That's one thing that he has done. He's brought us together. And he's brought about conservative activism like there has never been before. Everybody look back to the 60s when the anti-war groups were so active, and everybody talked about that was real political activism. Now, that wasn't real political activism because nothing got done real. This is real political activism, and you guys must have had a real celebration. I'm just guessing last month's meeting was kind of a victory party. If it wasn't, it certainly should have been. Yeah, John and I go back that day, you know, how dramatically technology has changed, obviously, but it was a real nasty Friday, the day the Skyway went down. And I was on the air with a guy named Marshall Cleaver. A lot of you people have been around here for a long time. Remember Marshall? He had been the Channel 10 news anchor. He was the John Wilson of the day. And he had left TV and came to work with us, and he was doing the morning news that morning. And Channel 8 was next door, and they really hadn't come in there yet. They didn't have the big morning show and all that stuff yet. And at 7:30 we were doing, it was the Friday before Mother's Day, we were talking to the different mothers of air personalities and asking what was happening to them and what their kids were doing for them for Mother's Day and all that kind of thing. And Marshall came in to do a little quick news drop in at 7:45, and he just happened to comment offhandedly. He said, I just heard on some chatter on the Channel 8, one of the Channel 8 police boxes, that somebody reported the Sunshine Skyway had fallen and that there are 100 people dead. And I said, what? I couldn't believe it. And Marshall went on the air, and I thought he was going to say something. He went through a whole little 2-minute news thing and said nothing, and then left. And I said, Marshall, what's the story about that? He said, well, I'm going to check on it. Me, I went on the air, and I said, we got a report of maybe something happening at the Sunshine Skyway. And I said, if anybody is out there and knows anything, please call us. Well, today you get 1 million calls because people have a cell phone. Back then we didn't have any cell phones. But we got calls, we got 2 calls right away from people who had come across, who were headed northbound, and got off the road there, which was easier to do back then, and had gone into one of those hotels along there and a payphone and called us at the radio station and said, yes, I just came across, and the thing is gone. Looked over to the left, it said it was the craziest thing I ever saw, and then there was a car hanging off the end as I got across there. He said it was unbelievable. But I'll never forget that morning. That was the day they pressed John into service. And John's one of the greatest news guys out there. I mean, he is after everything. He does more local news than anybody in the market, radio and TV combined. This is an extraordinary year that we have had, and extraordinary times that we're in right now. And I've never seen the country as polarized as it seems to be right now. And, you know, you think we made an amazing statement in the last election as 63 seats changed hands in the Congress. And that means, obviously, that the Republicans are taking over in the House of Representatives. We hope that, we know the Democrats didn't get the message. We're learning that with the DREAM Act and a few other things that are happening even now in a lame duck session. It's not a lame duck session, it's just a lame session. But obviously they didn't get the message, but what we can only hope when they do take office in January is that the Republicans got the message as well. Because that's going to be just as big an issue when they take power. They are going to have much more power than they had before, and it's going to be interesting to see what they do with it and what they can do to right the wrongs that have been done or to keep us on the right path. Because it really is frightening when you see what's happening with things like the DREAM Act and the health care issue. To me, one of the biggest issues of the day is immigration. Why we can't get anything done about immigration is staggering. Why we can't protect our borders. The fact that we have signs in America down near the borders saying, stay out of this area because it's unsafe. That's in America. There are signs, rather than having people down protecting our borders, there are signs saying, just get out of here because it's unsafe. You might get killed if you hang around down here. That's in America. And you wonder how long it's going to be before the chaos that is just across the border, say between El Paso and Juarez, the fact that thousands are dying in just a few miles away from El Paso, which ironically was named as the safest city in America just recently in one of these extensive surveys, but that just 10 miles away from there in Juarez, you got thousands of people dying or injured or wounded or threatened, and you wonder how long it's going to be before all of that drifts across a totally unprotected border. But it's really frightening. And to me, the immigration issue and the efforts for amnesty, that's become my litmus test. I've been friends with Charlie Crist for a long, long time, since he first started in politics. And of course, we all know how Charlie moved in a different direction, but I didn't realize how much so until, and I was the first one that even brought this up, and I brought it up with Charlie, but I was in Orlando, and this was just shortly, well, he was in a battle with Marco Rubio at that time. He had to desert the party. But I was reading something that they were talking about in Orlando that really wasn't an immigration-oriented story. It was more related to the deficit and things like that. And he was talking about, well, we can improve things dramatically, that we're going to have more income in this country if we offer a pathway to citizenship. for undocumented workers. And I thought, well, now that seems to be a little talk about amnesty for Charlie. I couldn't believe that, and I brought it up with him on the next time we had him on the show, and that turned out to be the last time we could get him on the show. Strangely enough, when we have people, and there are some certain people that won't come on the show at all, like Kathy Castor, who's an old friend of mine. I was especially good friends with her mother, and knew Kathy since she was a kid. She ain't going to be on the show anymore. Charlie doesn't come on. A lot of people like that won't come on with us anymore because they know we want to ask them the questions. I'm not as tough as Ted Webb is. He's really nasty on it. But that's good. But there are so many issues, and then of course the DREAM Act today. And it really is a sellout of America that people are looking at certain groups and saying, wow, the more of those people coming up impoverishing America. And believe me, that's happening. These people are coming up and impoverishing in America. And once they are given citizenship, we're going to impoverish it more because they aren't going to become wealthier once they become American citizens. Right now, they are in jobs that are way underpaying. They're not being supported because they aren't American citizens, but they do get by with our hospitalization. They're in our schools and things like that. But if they're all made American citizens, all of a sudden they're all going to be paid at least minimum wage and probably more. There's going to be more unionization, which is going to drive things even higher. And ultimately, everybody's going to pay dramatically more if we all of a sudden decide to give citizenship to 20 million people. 20 million people who are really at the poverty level and lower. And it just boggles my mind that some people are ready to do that, basically because, as somebody has called them, they're not undocumented workers, they're undocumented Democrats. And that's what they're looking at and saying that we can grow our dependent society. We're not looking at mathematicians or people with great construction skills or anything coming across the border right now. We're looking at people with minimum skills, if any skills at all. And people who are going to be part of a dependency, a dependent class, if indeed they become citizens. So for me, that's become a very much a litmus test of any politician. I mean, that's the first thing I say. What do you think about immigration? What do you think should be done? I mean, obviously close the borders, and for some reason, there doesn't seem to be any consensus in Washington on that. That's the most mind-boggling thing of all to me, that we don't sit around in Washington and say, why don't we stop illegal immigrants' numbers from growing in this country? And we haven't done it, and there seems to be no demand to do it. But I hope with the Republicans coming into power now, at least in the House of Representatives, that they can rattle enough change between now and 2012 to get something done about our borders. But for some reason, I kind of doubt it. But we'll see what happens. You know, rather than me just ramble on, I don't even know how I got into this immigration thing, but I was listening to her, and I really didn't even have any new way to start. I mean, I thought about that great quote from Reagan, and Reagan's got a mess up. Just Google Ronald Reagan quotes, and you'll see some of the most salient points, some of the greatest statements. You know, you look back to all the great quotes from our founding fathers, from Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson and John Adams and George Washington, and these quotes are used over and over again. But then you look at a litany of them from Ronald Reagan, and you think he should have been a founding father. He would have been a great founding father. He really understood it all. I mean, he, in my mind, he and Lincoln have to go down as the greatest presidents of all time. But what I'd like to do, rather than talk about what I want to talk about, I'd rather talk about what you want to talk about. So we'll open it up here to questions and answers. And my first question will be to you. Now, where did you get that silly reindeer thing there that you were wearing?
I was very old.
Okay, no, I like it. It's very nice. Okay, now it's your turn. You can ask the question and I'll answer. Yes, sir.
Did I mishear you on one of your on your morning show? Maybe it was a couple of weeks ago. That you're in support of expanding rail in Hillsborough and Pinellas County?
I was indeed for the light rail projects for Hillsborough and Pinellas County. I like what Alan Higginbotham is doing now in the county commission. He's saying if we're going to do it, he was against the sales tax vote, but he is very much for light rail, and he is now exploring ways that they might be able to get something done in which they can pay for it without without additional taxes, without more taxes on, without increasing the sales tax or something like that.
Why?
I just believe that we need it to compete with other metropolitan areas like ourselves. I mean, we're the last one that doesn't have it, and we're trying to compete with people like Charlotte and Atlanta and Dallas and Houston and Phoenix and places like that economically, and it gives them a big edge. The second thing people talk about when they're talking about relocating to the Tampa Bay area or relocating anywhere, first of all, is education. What kind of education do you have? And the second is what's your transportation system? What kind of transportation do you have? And in my mind, we need it here more than they need it in those places like Charlotte and everywhere, because we've got a bifurcated market here. There's such a gap between Hillsborough County and Pinellas County in many, many ways. It's a gap physically because of the bay, but even more so mentally there's a gap, and you find people in Pinellas County that go years and years without going to Hillsborough, and vice versa. The people in Hillsborough never even get to Pinellas. They have no idea what's going on over here. But I just think it's important economically that we do that. And there's nothing that radical about the government providing transportation. I mean, that goes back to roads that our founding fathers, they did it with toll roads, the pay-as-you-go plan, but it's not like some new service asking for the government to provide some new service. It's something that goes back to the late 1700s and early 1800s, that they realized that in order to maintain commerce, to maintain continuity throughout the country, that they had to have transportation systems that worked. And so again, it's not like saying, I think they should take over healthcare, I think they should take over the oil companies or something like that. I just think that for the government to put together transportation systems or to have private enterprises do it is a good function of government. The tax plan obviously was not a good one because it got slammed over there. And I did want to see the people get a chance to vote on it, which they did. And they spoke very loudly and clearly and said, we don't want an additional penny tax here. And I like what Higginbotham is doing, saying, let's see if we can do it another way or try to get a private group to take care of it. Yes, sir, in the back. Yeah.
Well, give me an example. Amtrak has never made a penny since its existence.
Well, that's a pathetic system, too. Have you written on that thing?
It's $15 to $30 billion a year is bailed out. New York City has the most used rail system in the country, and every year it goes belly up. Our buses, from what I gather, in Pinellas County cost us an extra $10 million a year that we don't have. And we're going to have a rail system? That doesn't make sense.
Why are they doing all this road construction if they're gonna put in a rail system?
Oh, I don't know. You
Billions
can't.
of dollars.
Well, there are a lot of myths about the rail thing. The rail thing is not going to dramatically decrease traffic in any way, shape, or form. It's going to cut it some, but what it does, it gives you choices. And that's what it's done in Charlotte and places like that. But
Why would one of the commissioners have said that it's too easy to get around Pinellas County? We need this rail.
he said what now?
It's too easy to get around Pinellas County.
It's too easy to get around Pinellas County?
He's never gone from my house to my son's house.
He's never driven all the way through Pinellas Park.
Yeah.
I don't know where he's driven, but he made the comment.
Jack,
Yeah.
just to let you know, this is pretty much an anti-rail crowd.
Oh, I know it. When I have spoken to similar groups before that vote in Hillsborough County, I took that issue, that question off the table in the beginning. I said, look, you and I all disagree on this rail thing, so no use even discussing it. But now that it's over, now that they're talking about doing it again, you could make the case that you shouldn't do anything it's not gonna pay for itself. That the government shouldn't do anything that's not gonna pay for itself. That means it'll be a zero-line thing. We don't have to pay taxes. Everything pays for itself. We can do away with those nasty property taxes and everything else.
We'll continue with the serious conversation in just a few seconds, but I have the most important question of the evening. I arrived here in 1973.
Yeah.
And I was anchoring the news on, at that time, one of your major competing stations. every morning, driving into my radio station, I was listening to your radio station, and my biggest agitation over all these years is, and you're not gonna know what I'm talking about because you have to go way back for this one. Whatever happened to Moose?
I used to have a character called, he was a little tiny guy called Moose, the time tone. And he'd run in and beat, you'd say, and
You hear the clump?
now the time it's a tone, and the tone saying that, he'd be running in, and he'd go, beep. He had a real high voice, he's there, beep, and then he'd run out again. And he was from the Temple Terrace Time Tone Technical Training Institute.
Yes.
Yeah, he's retired somewhere to an old folks
A Moose
time
farm.
technical training home.
Other questions having nothing to do with rail?
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to know, I thought they did research on this rail and they already invested a lot of money and they couldn't do it because of the zoning issues.
Now, who did that?
A few years ago, when we voted no on the first time around, when we had that vote, but they did a zoning measurement on it and they couldn't do it. They said it was impossible because we didn't have the space and for the speed for the rail to go. So, now we're going to waste more money for more investigation into this when they already know the answer?
Yeah, well, first of all, it isn't going to happen in any of our lifetimes, so it becomes a moot point, but
It's
yeah,
our money.
oh, I know, definitely so.
So why even put this up? Why Obama and Chris go at it when it was voted out no? And you go against the people, the American people.
I think like the bullet train that they're talking about over here, which the federal government was supposed to put the whole bill, but of course that's our taxpayer dollars when you say the federal government. Now I was for that bullet train only for one reason. If they were going to build one, I wanted it built between here and Orlando. If there was any way they're not going to build any, I said more power to them because that indeed would be, to me, a waste of taxpayer dollars. But it was going to be wasted, I'd rather waste it between here and Orlando because it would have benefited us more than anybody else. I don't think it's ever going to get built. But it would have benefited us more than anybody else because if they had decided to put it in California or Michigan or somewhere else, you're going to pay the same thing for it except you don't get any benefit at all.
Okay,
I was
so
hoping
it's
they'd
not
build it to
gonna be built,
downtown
they're putting
St.
money
Petersburg.
into it now?
Huh?
It's not going to be built, you think?
I don't know. I don't think it will be because Rick Scott's against it and you've got Republicans coming into Congress. I think they're going to put a screeching halt to it.
Is this?
Okay, we're gonna have one last question because we have a lot of more business.
This
and I'm
is
gonna
not
let
a
Marta
question,
do
it's
it.
just a comment.
Okay.
There are only 2 rail systems in the world that actually have made money. One is in Japan, the other one, it's either China or Korea. None of the rest of them in the United States, in Chicago, New York, California, anywhere, none of them make any money. So this whole thing that they're even considering this is completely a losing proposition, and it's just gonna throw more of our tax dollars into something that won't work.
Well, I think we'll all agree that
We're talking about immigration again.
nobody's going to make any money on rail anywhere in the country. I agree. And I agree the bullet train needs to die. We don't need the bullet train system. All I said was if we're going to have it, I want it to be here to there. Take everybody else's taxpayer dollars in America and put them here for a change instead of ours going there. And I wanted it there because we would have benefited more than anybody because more people coming to Disney would say, hey, we're going to ride that bullet train. We're going to go to Tampa, we're going to go to St. Petersburg, we're going to go to the beaches, we're going to go to the Seminole Gambling, we're going to go to Busch Gardens, we're going to go wherever. But if they can kill it, that is a good thing. They do not need the bullet train, that's for sure.
Okay.
No more
Yeah.
questions
Thank you
about
very
grants.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All aboard?